We're heading next to our next speaker, and he serves as advisor to the European Parliament, is a member of the Advisory Scientific Committee of the European Systematic Risk Board, and the Euro 50 group of eminent economists. Since 2000, he has been the director of the Center for the European Policy Studies. So please give a warm welcome to Daniel Gros. Daniel, welcome on stage of Webit. Thank you so much. The clicker is here. Here you are.
Okay, thanks, but I think I'll just speak, no visuals. It's a pleasure to be here. As you have noticed, I'm also coming from Brussels, so I have a somewhat Eurocentric view. And I wanted to say a few words about the biggest crisis facing Europe right now, what you have called the Euro-refugee crisis. I've been running around many years about the Euro crisis. Now we have a Euro-refugee crisis. And to make a long story short, I would have two theses. The first one is that, as announced in the title, it's a political problem, but should be considered an economic opportunity. And the second one is that perhaps too much technology can be an obstacle to integration. And maybe that's somewhat different from what subsequent speakers will say. Now let me come to my first part. We all know in Europe the refugees are perceived as a problem. And strangely enough, this perception that they are a problem is strongest in that part of Europe which actually needs immigration most, namely Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe is a part of Europe where aging is proceeding quickest, where there's lots of emigration, and now people are opposing immigration. Of course, they fear for the homogeneity of their society, their culture, but many also fear for their jobs. And I think they could do well to think about the example of the United States, where actually immigration has been one of the biggest factors which has given the American economy its vitality and also its innovative potential today. And I think that is what is missing. That's a point of view which is actually more accepted in some parts of Northern Europe, like Germany or Sweden, where you also have popular opposition, but those responsible for the economy and for industry are saying, we need these people. We need these people because A, we don't have too few kids on our own, but also because they come from the outside and they bring new points of views, and usually they are a self-selected group, because those who actually make it then to Europe are those who are most entrepreneurial. As you know, it's not that easy to get, I was going to say, here to Sofia, or even to get further on to Germany. And that's why there are special programs now also in Germany to say, let's take these people. They have crossed thousands of miles of dangerous territory and waters. They must have something in them which could be valuable for the economy. So the point is that you can turn a political problem into an economic opportunity. In Germany, actually, we have seen that happening 20 years ago. A bit over 20 years ago, we had the Yugoslav crisis. We had 500,000 people fleeing to Germany mostly and Austria. And at the time again, people were revolting and saying, we have very high unemployment in Germany, this cannot go on, they're taking our jobs away. And then, year after year, we saw that these people actually can get jobs, they can become productive, and after a while, the political problems went away, and the economic opportunities were more visible. And I think that is what we have to do. Of course, governments cannot provide the jobs. It's the economy that has to do it. And I think here the important role for industry associations and individual entrepreneurs who take the initiative to say, here we have people who maybe don't have the proper formal skills, they might not have the language skills, but we can make them productive. However, and that is my second thesis, I feel that sometimes this emphasis on technology might actually be an obstacle to integration. Look at the difference between an immigrant in the United States in the 19th or even until mid-20th century. You arrive in New York, usually, and then contact with home is a postcard which takes perhaps several weeks to get there, and if it gets, and several weeks back. Telephone calls after a while become available, but they're extremely expensive. So that means you are forced to integrate also mentally in the environment you live. You have to take local news. You have to have contact with your physical neighbors. Whereas sometimes today I have the impression that with all the technology, communications and equipment that we have, people can arrive physically in Europe, be it Sofia or Germany or somewhere else. But mentally, they remain in their home country. Most of their Facebook friends or other things are contacts from their home community. They communicate among themselves, and very often then they remain really isolated. Television, of course, is one of these important part, and now streaming makes it even easier, that people basically don't even have contact with local news. They can't read the local newspapers. They don't understand local TV. So it's a burden for them. It's difficult. And when it's difficult, you try to avoid it. And that is why they are much slower in learning local languages. They have much less contact, with physical contact with their environment. And therefore, you have much more frequently these ghettos which arise, which then in the end make it more difficult to integrate these newcomers. So my short story is therefore, we have lots of political problems in Europe right now with the refugees coming. But if we treat them properly, we could turn it in an economic opportunity. But technology could perhaps be an obstacle. And maybe people here can think how we can overcome that. How we can make sure that people just don't use technology to stay in contact with their own friends, with their home, but also use it to integrate. That we create local groups where perhaps technology can be used to integrate people in their local environment, learn the language, learn the laws, learn the regulations, and learn for their new jobs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for being here on stage with us.